Well, welcome back, everybody, to this final between two sermons of this 10 Commandments series, Words to Live By. I know, unbelievable. It's gone very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Thanks for
I hope you feel that way.
Yeah. Maybe you all don't feel that way. We feel that way.
Yeah.
So it's great. And it's a great one to really end on. Well, obviously, God ended it for us in that he put this one in the order that it did. But coveting... I really feel like for us and where we are as a society, man, there can't be a more appropriate one for us to really consider as a society.
Yeah. Even as you and I were talking a few minutes ago, Bob, before we started, about Romans 7, which, I've read it before like you have, but I did see it in a new light. And I did see... perhaps because we're studying the 10 Commandments, and Paul talks about the 10 Commandments, but about how that commandment, how it kind of took him by surprise. I mean, you think about things in life that, you think everything's going great until you don't, until you see something that you didn't see before, and it changes everything. I mean, in a good way or a bad way, but when we think of it in a bad way, like, you see your this last 5 years in a different way. You see, a relationship in a different way. You see an investment in a different way. You see whatever, and the Apostle Paul, who built his whole life, he had a framework for his whole life, which in this case, as a, religious a minister, a professional Christian, or whatever you want to call him, and he thinks he's doing so well, right?
Yep.
With, in this case, the commandments. And then here comes the number 10, which in some ways is a lens to look at them all, and he brings him to his knees.
Yeah. I love the way you broke down that passage, because for me, that was a fresh look at Romans 7. I don't know. I don't know how many times I've read Romans 7 before.
Right.
I mean, probably over 100 at least.
Yeah, right,
I mean, I don't know, but I hadn't thought about it. I hadn't dwelled on it the way that you kind of picked it apart.
Yeah.
And Paul's the sin that really got him was coveting.
Right.
Because he realized it was his heart.
That's right.
That was really the thing that was getting in the way.
Right.
And it's so interesting about it. I mean, I think we all kind of get this. We're smart enough to know that our desires, our bad behaviors are preceded by our bad desires. I think we know ourselves well enough to know that. But I think we also do, consciously or unconsciously, I should say, speak for myself, that I play this game of, as long as I haven't in my real life or in my behaviors cross the line, as long as I haven't criticized you to your face, John, it's okay if it's in my heart. As long as I haven't, fill in the blank, said something to another person or tackled them or whatever your issue is, what I mean, that I'm okay, that I'm honoring God, and in the 10th commandment says, these aren't my words, but someone else would say, it becomes it's almost like God's leading us there. He's sort of taking us one day at a time, one step at a time. Don't commit sin, don't steal, don't commit adultery, honor your parents, keep the Sabbath. Okay, I'm doing, and then now let me tell you how, where this all begins. And it really begins in your heart. And although other people cannot, I could be in a room of people, they don't know if I am having an issue with X, Y, or Z, but I am having an issue with X, Y, or Z, and God knows it. Right.
And this is the one of the revelations I think Paul had. It, and that we can have.
Yeah, I mean, this idea I feel like is so worthy to kind of drill down on just for a second, because our society, we're inundated with messages all the time. Yeah. I remember in the 80s, there was this phrase going around, greed is good.
Right, Gordon Gekko, I'm old enough to know.
There you go. Right. And I think in a way, I don't know if we've even grown out of that as a society. Wow. I think we mask it in different ways.
That's right. Yeah.
But I think ultimately we live practically like greed is good.
Yeah.
And
whether it's on social media, whether it's on TV ads, whatever it is, we're just inundated with it. Like,
no, it is a real sickness and a disease, and it's in our veins.
Yes.
You and me and everybody else, and the 10th commandment calls it out.
Right. And it can go anywhere. That's the thing that's so deceptive about it.
Yeah.
Is it can be in any part of our lives. Like you and me, we're pastors, right? And you would think, oh, well, pastors
we don't have those kind of problems.
We do.
Yeah.
And it can be really deceptive because I can look at, we were talking about this before too, like I can look at another church and say like another church has this thing or that thing, or
another pastor.
Another pastor has this gift or that gift.
Right.
And if I could just speak like this pastor, or if I could just,
my kids were as successful as his.
Yeah.
I mean, all whatever.
Whatever.
Right.
Whatever it is. If this platform, that platform.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And that's just one little section. Like that's not even taken into account. Like, if I just had this car or that car, if I just went on this vacation or that vacation, if I just did this thing or that thing, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And I just think that's reality for.
And it reminds us back. I was thinking of the passage of Philippians, which was in the sermon too, when the Apostle Paul says, I have learned the secret of contentment. It's an interesting word. You almost think secret's an odd word.
Right.
But, I'm sure it's carefully chosen. And I don't think he means that, he's holding it behind his back like a little kid is a secret, like I have something I'm going to tell you, is to say it's contentment is not something that is easily achieved. It's something, he says 2 times in that passage, I learned in whether I had a lot or nothing. In every situation, I learned contentment. And that is such a powerful challenge. And I think in many ways the antidote to this awful thing that's in all of us. I mean, the covetousness that's part of our human heart is, it's both a challenge and an opportunity. If I wasn't a Christian, I don't really know how I would manage this. I mean, obviously, many people a lot of people aren't Christians,
right?
But and we find our way in life. But to really address the brokenness of the human heart without Christ, as Paul says, I do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That's a it's just a short phrase. There's a lot. What does he mean by that? Well, it could mean, God's forgiveness, God's grace, God's the power of the Holy Spirit. There's a lot that it means, and one has to really think about that to say, how do I, respond, incorporate, make Christ my strength, because that's really the only way. And that I can not just dodge the bullet of covetousness, but truly heal my own heart and truly come to a place where I can. We talked about this 2 weeks ago when we talked about the 6th commandment, or a few weeks ago about stealing. That I can really free myself from this urge and this craving to have things that I think are going to complete me.
Yeah. So in your life, maybe this is just a great question to kind of consider. And I don't know if anything pops off the top of your head on this, but as you talk about learning that secret to contentment, what instances have there been where you've been forced to kind of learn that secret on your own? Is there anything that pops into your head as you think about, like, when have you learned? Not that we ever get to the place where we master it, but like, have you ever hit a spot where you're like, I feel like maybe I learned a little bit more about what it means to be content in this season?
That's such a great question. The first thing that pops to my head, which may not be the best thing or the clearest thing, is, trying to keep myself even in small ways, in connection with other people's needs. And so, I'm very humbled and let's say, you have a need and I can meet it, or someone has a need and I choose to meet it.
Yeah.
And I have the means to meet it. And that's not only brings me some kind of joy, which it probably does for Christians and non-Christians. It's sort of human nature it brings you a joy. But I think it also, at the same time, I think it can, and it has, not always, but it's a time of slowing down and reminding myself, that all I have is a gift, and that my life, even on its worst day, is really full of a lot of great things. So yes, are there things in my life that I wish I had that I don't? Yes. Circumstances, people. I've been going down the list in Exodus 20:17. Of course, I'm a human being. But at the same time, I think as I try to stay awake to what's going on in the lives of other people, available in meeting needs, even in very small ways, it's a fresh reminder just of, in some ways, how much God has given me. And not only in my salvation, but in other practical ways. And, that's one way to do it. That's one way I'm grateful. I can keep myself, keep my feet on the ground and not be so worried about what I don't have.
Yeah, that's super practical.
How about you?
I wasn't expecting to answer my own question. Yeah, what does it look like to be content? I think sometimes it's this is going to be weird, but not getting what I want, is kind of a lesson in contentment in and of itself. Sometimes, so, and because you realize the thing that I was after actually isn't all that important anyway. So I'm trying to make it very practical here. So, I'm a hunter. So like I like going after the big deer, and that's my thing. But I often fail at doing that. And I have in my mind, if I achieve this goal, then I'm going to be happier. But I don't, I often don't achieve that goal.
Right.
And I often am like, that really was kind of a empty thing to even go after.
Right.
I don't know why I was pursuing that.
Yeah.
I was at this event a couple of weeks ago, and it was full of these bow hunters. And this guy was talking. He was in there to talk, this professional guy. And the more and more he talked, my brother-in-law and I were there together, the more and more he talked, it was all about him. And it was all about he just kept on showing picture after picture after picture of all these animals that he had harvested over the years. And it got hollower and hollower and hollower over the whole time. And I was like, there's nothing else. He had nothing else in his life other than this.
Yeah.
And I actually felt really sad leaving because I was like, this guy, that's all he has.
Right.
Is this.
Right.
And so even in that, just reminding myself oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I could chase this, but if I chase that is the wrong way to go.
Yeah.
So that's for me, even a practical, I know not everybody will identify with that one, but that's, sometimes it's just those times of leaning into those things.
No, you recognize what's really important. This is maybe almost common sense, but we don't always live by common sense.
Yeah.
But if I want the person, the girl, the thing, whatever it is that we're out after, the achievement. I want that professional success. Okay,
Sure.
Whether maybe it's the biggest doe or biggest buck out there, or it's some kind of award.
Yeah.
But really, if you think about it, you don't have to be that thoughtful. What I want is how that makes me feel, right? The thing itself, the car, even a year later or 6 months later, loses its shine. The new car, but it's the feeling. And you could say some of those feelings. Now, some of those feelings are superficial, maybe, but let's call it peace, or contentment, which is where we ended in this sermon. Well, those things, if that's really what we're after, is not so much the things or the people or the circumstance. All those are okay, but it's the thing behind it. Well, then maybe, I think this is some of if you're a Christian here today, okay, that's key. Maybe some of these deep feelings, even like Paul in prison, I've learned in every situation to be content. I take him at his word that he's not just saying that.
Right.
I mean, he's saying, you know what? I'm in this. I have nothing but the shirt on my back and my 2 squares or whatever they gave you in prison. Yeah. But you know what? I'm content because I would assume in his case I can do all things through Christ.
Right.
I have a peace that that material things and circumstances can't give me. And I think even though that's, it sounds cliche or it's easier said than done, that is true for every one of us.
Yeah.
And we really do.
Yeah.
And we just need to, do our best to, as you were saying earlier, realize that we're living in a culture that says the opposite. We don't have the privilege of living in a cave.
Yes.
We live in the world that is built on the idea, because it's not about just America, but I mean built on the idea that we're going to try to sell you something that you don't need. It's okay.
Yeah.
We're not trying to knock America or capitalism, but that's the nature of the beast. We all know that.
Yeah.
And that's true from the shoes you wear to the house you live in to everything. So we just need to be aware of that because we are not, we sometimes say we're very sophisticated, thoughtful Christians and we don't do the world's thing, but of course we do.
Yeah. So I think that's a great way to end kind of the conversation and maybe even to challenge people.
Yeah.
Like, where are those areas, because this is the norm for us?
Yeah.
Where are the areas that you are tempted to find yourself most discontent? Like, where are you running to in your mind? It's often not like what you're actually doing. Sometimes it is what you do, but it's in your mind, in your heart. Where do you naturally go to find contentment apart from Christ?
Yeah.
Apart from what he offers us?
Yeah.
If you're honest, and all of us have those places.
No, it's good.
One place or another place.
Yeah. And what step can you take if I'm honest and you're honest and I can come up, I have a list. It doesn't take me long to get there. To move towards addressing that to find true contentment. We, as Paul said, it's learned. If I said to you, what do you think about physics and you or whatever, or what do you think about the war in Ukraine? If you don't know anything, whatever the subject is, you have to learn.
Yes.
And contentment too is learned.
Yes.
And we have to realize that it's not going to show up.
Yes.
It's not going to fall down from the sky.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, great points. And thanks, Rob, not only for this sermon, but throughout the whole series, just getting us to think about these commandments in a new and fresh way.
Amen.
I know that it will resonate with people beyond just these 10 weeks,
Great.
but
So. Good.
for a long time. So thanks for doing that. Thank you all for joining us, these 12 maybe weeks, I think, together.
12, you're right. Yeah.
And it'll be great to see you on our next installment of Between Two Sermons.